So this is the first weekend recap for worship leaders. I'm a worship leader at my church, and I figured I would just kind of do a little bit of a weekend recap. Not necessarily talking about exactly what we did as a church, but kind of more the feelings and the thoughts and the experience that I kind of gained. Maybe it's a couple things that I learned this weekend about worship leading. And also just a little bit of a way for me to sort of decompress, I guess, from the weekend. Worship leaders, you probably can relate a little bit to a lot of these things that I, feeling and going through and that kind of stuff. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to have this forum to talk about it, and you guys can share in the comments below or whatever. So this weekend, at my church we do a Saturday night service, we do 2 Sunday morning services, and sometimes once a month I do a Sunday night service at one of our locations. And everything went really, really well. The music went really well. Rehearsing with the musicians went really, really well. I have the honor and privilege of being able to work with some really, really talented people. And the thing that I've been fighting a lot recently with has started to kind of creep back up into my mind. And the weird thing about this is it's just a perception issue. It's not really anybody doing anything wrong. And I'm not necessarily doing anything wrong either, but, when we do rehearsals, we also do like a run through of the entire service before we get to the actual time that people show up for church. And we have a service director. Our lead pastor is in and out of the room for the run through, as well as our one of our other lead pastors, our lead pastor's wife, is in and out of the room too. And they're exchanging notes. They're talking about the whole building, what's going on in the building, what needs to be changed, adjusted, all that kind of stuff. And as I'm leading through the rehearsals, as I'm leading through the run through, I'll see them talking. And the very first thing that always comes to mind is like, what are we doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? I'm thinking through, should we be more energetic on stage? Should we be like trying to engage more in like worship? Should we be trying to like create that balance, between like engaging and helping lead people in worship? Or should we be really trying to make sure that we're worshiping first, and kind of like, are we maintaining that balance well? I'm thinking about how's the excellence, how's the quality level of all the music and the lights and everything. I'm thinking about all this stuff, and it's just from seeing them talk to each other. Now the weird thing about that is that, again, like I said, they're not doing anything wrong, and honestly, like 9 times out of 10, they're probably not even talking about me. They're not talking about like how well things feel like they're going in the auditorium. A lot of times they're talking about something else. And they're not even necessarily like saying, oh, this thing needs to change. They might just be saying like, hey, let's just make sure we start on time today. Or, just like weird little things like that. But it gets in my head. And I guess that's kind of where I want to focus this discussion a little bit today, is that those mind monsters, those things that are, those lies that Satan is constantly trying to pour into our minds, can really get us distracted from the main thing. Right? At the end of the day, we're not trying to impress people. Paul says, I think it's in Romans, not sure off the top of my head, but it's one of my favorite little passages of scripture. Paul says, if I'm doing this for God, not for people. If I was doing this for people, I should quit. Basically, that was the TED version of the Bible. But really, like, that's kind of the point, right? If we're doing this to try to impress people, like, what are we even... There are so many better ways to try to impress people. Like, you could be any kind of entertainer, and people just go, yay, a magic trick, or yay, a song, Being a Christ follower and leading people in worship is not necessarily the recipe for impressing people. But we do this to honor God, right? We do this to honor Him. And it's so easy for Satan to just take a little twist to what we're trying to do and get us focused on just the wrong things. Like, yes, those things are important. Making sure that what we're bringing to the table is a quality experience for people, like a distraction-free environment where they can just process God, think about Him, focus on Him, that they're led to the throne room, right? They're led to that point where they either literally or figuratively hit their knees and acknowledge God as God and themselves as not God, you know? That's our job as worship leaders. But it's so easy for Satan to get it in our heads like, oh, the number one thing that matters right now is excellence. Or like the number one thing that matters right now is making sure that, you know, the technology is all working. Excuse me. I had birthday cake. Not for my birthday, but it's giving me the hiccups. But anyway, I was just thinking about this because it was really impacting me this week. And it's kind of embarrassing that it's still a thing. I mean, I'm 30 years old. I've been leading worship now ever since I was 12, you know, doing different kids ministry worship stuff and then youth group worship stuff and then worship things in college and worship bands and blah, blah, all that different stuff. And now, you know, serving at the church where I'm currently at for 10 years. And, you know, I've been worship leading for a long time. And for this to still be a struggle and to, not really a struggle, but still be like an area that Satan really tries to like tap into and get me distracted. It's annoying, you know, to look back on the weekend and go like, oh man, I could have enjoyed the process of serving so much more if I wouldn't have given into those lies, you know, given into those, you know, little mind monsters pecking away. Just seeing people talking, not being able to, I can't read lips, you know, so it's all an assumption thing happening in my head. So is that something that you find yourself dealing with, find yourself struggling with? Like maybe, you know, maybe your pastor's in the front row and you're leading worship and their hands are raised and they're worshiping and all of a sudden they like lean over and talk to somebody next to them. Like, is the first thing that goes through your head like, oh my gosh, what are we doing wrong? What kind of notes are they making so that way we can make some improvements and da-da-da-da? Or are you just thinking like, hey, I'm leading worship right now. This is so awesome. I'm hanging out with God. I'm hanging out with people. And then like approaching the truth of that fact maybe later, you know? Maybe they were saying like, hey, let's make a note. Let's make an adjustment. Let's not do that song anymore. That song is terrible. I don't know. Who knows what they're saying, right? But I was just thinking that this is probably something that not only I deal with. And so I want to kind of get it out there, get it off my chest and share with you guys. And hopefully, again, like I said, create a forum where we can kind of talk about that and process that and figure out what are some really good ways to combat that, some really good ways to, you know, put those things aside and really focus on the task at hand, which when we're leading worship, guys, let's be honest, our first and foremost task is to worship God, right? You can't lead somebody to a place where you aren't already. That's just pointing a direction towards something. If I want to take somebody to a gas station, if I want to lead them to a gas station, I need to be in front of them and they follow me into the gas station, right? I don't know why I picked a gas station. What a weird metaphor to be using. But if I'm just trying to, like, if I'm pointing the direction of the gas station, I don't necessarily need to go there, right? I'm just saying, like, gas station's that way. Well, leading worship, we're not pointing direction worship, we're leading worship. We want to make sure that that's a place that we already are at. And we're leading people there. But secondarily, we want to be leading, right? We don't want to just be worshiping. That's important. And obviously, if we're not worshiping, we're not leading worship. But if we're not leading, we're also not leading worship. How are we getting rid of these mind monsters and putting these lies on the wayside and removing the distractions for ourselves so that we can focus on this task at hand, which is helping other people to be able to enter the throne room of God, to help other people to be able to focus on Him, maybe think about a song in a new way so that way those lyrics aren't just like mind-numbingly the same thing that they've been singing for months on end, or hearing in the radio or humming along in their car, that they're seeing the song from a new angle. It's hitting them in a different light, you know, kind of as we turn that diamond, like what's the different angle that they're able to see of God's character, you know, like that's our job. That's the thing that we need to be focusing on as worship leaders. So tell me in the comments below, how do you fight those lies, those mind monsters? What kind of lies or mind monsters do you deal with in the course of rehearsal times and actually leading worship? Like, what are things that distract you as a worship leader from doing what you're called to do, which is lead worship? I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to get your advice. I mean, hopefully, I don't know if I've even offered advice. I think I just kind of started a conversation. So hopefully you guys you'll take part of that and share what's going on in your mind and your heart. That's kind of my recap from this last week, from this last weekend at church. And I'm looking forward to having another recap with you guys next week. Until then, thank you guys so much for hanging today. Peace.